So far, we have seen some motivations for investments and a quick glance at what is meant by bonds and equities. Whenever there is a need of money, business companies offer debt bonds. What I explained previously is in particular a debt bond, and the companies issues either debt bonds or equity or even both. These are some of the investment opportunities to grow our money. There are also other ways of investments. For instance, one can invest in commodities, real estate, foreign currencies, etc. A mode of investment is often referred as a investment instrument. As I told you, every investment in fact involves some risk, whether it is bond or equity or others. As mentioned earlier, only bonds issued by governments or fixed deposits from public sector banks may be regarded as a risk-free investment, because the government, in fact, the RBI can always print the money and meet their liabilities, right? So therefore, that in that sense, they are risk-free. Otherwise, everything else will involve some way or the other risk. So bonds issued by government, they don't have risk, provided if we hold them till the maturity date. An important question comes into our mind is, why do we have to go for a risky investment when there are risk-free ones? See, government bonds or bank deposit rates are often fixed at par with the inflation, plus possibly little more. If we want to grow our money much more than the inflation to meet our higher financial goals, then the only way out is to go for risky investment. For example, one can go for equities. Okay, so this is a general remark. Let us now have a brief introduction about what is meant by finance market. Generally, the holding period, the time, that is the time period between the offer date and the maturity date of a bond, is very large. Okay, it can be from 10 years to even 100 years. Thus, it becomes difficult for an investor if there is a need of money at some time before the maturity date. In the case of equities, there is in fact no predefined maturity date. Thus, one needs a way to get back their invested money whenever they need it. An investment can be viewed as a purchase of an asset. When we invest in a bond or in equity shares of a company, we are set to purchase the bond or equity shares. They are considered to be an asset to the investors. It is very important to have a platform where one can find a buyer of these assets at any point of time, so that an investor can sell a part or fully the holding of the asset and convert it into money whenever they want. Such an action is called liquidating. Let's take an example. Suppose you purchased a bond, okay, issued by some company, say for 1 lakh, and for the period of 10 years, say. So you are very happy that they are going to give you a good interest, say 10% or something like that. But after some time, you say after 1 year or two, you got into a situation where you want that money, maybe for educational purpose or something. You want that money, but you know the bond says that your invested money will come back to you only after 10 years. So what to do? You may look for somebody who can buy your bond and give you the value of the bond as money to you. Okay, so in other words, you can go and meet people and say that, look, I have this bond, it is maturing after say 9 years or 8 years or whatever it is, and So, but I want money today. Please, can you take this bond and give me the money? Obviously, the people who are looking at you as a person who is very badly in need of money will try to bargain with you. They may not give you the full amount of the value of that bond, but they will bargain with you. Doesn't matter. Since you want money very badly, you may look for a better uh, bargain and then you will go for it. Okay, so thereby you will sell the bond and get the money from them, right? So such an exchange is called, trading, and there are places where such trades can happen. These are called exchange markets or simply market. So markets are actually finance markets in particular is a platform where we can buy and sell assets that are allowed or listed in the market. A platform where you can buy or sell bonds is called bond market. Similarly, you have equity markets, commodity markets, currency markets, etc. So basically in a market, buyers and sellers, they are called traders, meet, bargain with each other upon the price of the asset. A buyer tries to reduce the price, whereas a seller tries to increase naturally. Whenever there is a mutual understanding between each others, the asset gets exchanged with the money. Such an action is called a trade. Every country has at least one platform where all the assets are traded, or most of the assets are traded. For instance, there are two popular or highly traded exchange markets in India, namely the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange. They allow traders of many kind of assets, including bonds, equity, commodities, etc. And they operate online, where the traders, buyers and sellers, it means, meet virtually without knowing each other and trade. As I told you, they include bond market, equity market, commodity markets, currency markets, and of course, most importantly, they also include derivative markets. The next topic is what is meant by a derivative market, which is also very important for our course. A derivative is a financial contract. What is mean by a contract? A contract, more specifically financial contract, links two parties upon an agreement which happens sometime in future. A derivative is basically a financial contract that derives its value from the price of an underlying asset. So this is more important. We have to understand what is the mean by the pricing of an underlying asset. Let us try to understand through an example. Consider two parties. In our example, these two parties are basically a farmer and a merchant. The farmer, once he knows how much he is going to grow in this season, say for instance rice, he may go to have an agreement with a merchant much before he harvests. So in thereby he may call the merchant for a contract in which he will say that he will supply rice, 100 kg of rice at a price of 50 per kg. So he may put this contract uh, on a day, and the execution of the contract may be in some future time. Say for instance, he puts this contract on 1st of December and then he may go to execute it on 31st of January, anytime in future. Okay, but they have to precisely tell at what time this contract will be executed. If the merchant thinks that this is a good offer, he may go for it, means he will agree with it. If thereby he will also give a return stating that he will surely buy this 100 kg and pay him the price which is quoted in that. Okay, so this is a legal agreement between the farmer and the merchant, and it is a kind of derivative, we can say. Okay, more specifically, we can say that it is something like a forward contract. So you have like that, you have forward contract, future contract. Future is nothing but very similar to forward contracts. Only thing is forward contracts happens over the counter. It means not on online, whereas futures happens on online trading. Okay, and thereby they happens on some uh, recognized exchanges like National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange in India. And since they go through some proper exchanges, they will have more regulations. Okay, and the promises are maintained. Basically, that's the thing. Whereas in forward, since it happens through return statement, maybe one of the parties may not agree when at the time of execution, if it is not very favorable for them, there is a danger that the other party may face problem with that. So that risk is always there with forward, whereas in future it's more regulated. I'll come to options little later. So before that, let us see what all the types of risk that they face. Okay, so suppose on the 31st of January, the rice per kg in the market is say 60 rupees per kg. Okay, on 31st of January, suppose you assume that it is 60 rupees per kg. What happens? Since uh, the farmer put this agreement, he has to respect this agreement. Therefore, he will sell 100 kg for only 50 rupees. Whereas the merchant can buy it for 50 rupees and immediately sell it in the market for 60 rupees, and thereby he can make 10 rupees right away per kg profit. Okay, so that's a good part for him. On the other hand, suppose it is only 40 rupees per kg on the market at the time of expiry, that is at the time of execution. See, they are putting it on December. So in December, they don't know what will be the price of the rice on 31st of January. So both parties are taking this risk mutually. Okay, suppose it is 40 kg, what he will do, he will face a loss, that he will be buying it for 50 rupees. Since he binded this agreement, he has to respect it. Therefore, he will buy it for 50 rupees, and he will go to sell in the market for 40 rupees, because that is the price at that time the rice is selling in the market. Therefore, he will face the loss. So these are the loss and profit factors for the merchant. On the other hand, what will be the loss and profit for, or the risk for the farmer? Let us see. Of course, if it is 60 rupees, he could have gone to the market and sold his products rather than coming to the merchant with whom he put the contract. Therefore, he is in this case he will be losing, whereas in this case the farmer will be gaining, because in the open market the rice is sold at 40 rupees, but just because the contract was made, the merchant is forced to buy the rice from the farmer at the rate of 50 rupees. Therefore, the farmer will be at profit in the second case. There is one more risk for the farmer. For instance, if the farmer was not able to grow 100 kg of rice, then in order to meet this contract, he has to buy the shortage of the rice from the outside market and supply it to the merchant. In that case, he will be at loss if the outside market rate is 60 rupees, because he will be buying at 60 rupees and selling at 50 rupees to the merchant. Whereas if the rice price is 40, then in this case, the farmer will be gaining 10 rupees per kg. So these are the risks on both sides. as far as this kind of contracts are concerned. This is more like a forward contract, and if it is online, then it is a future contract. So it's not necessary one has to do only rice or any such commodities. The underlying asset can be, even stocks. Okay, and in fact, in futures, more common underlying asset that is traded in future and similarly in option are actually the stocks. Okay, let's see what is mean by option. Option is more or less the idea is same as future, but there is one difference. The difference is the following. In futures or in forwards, you can see that both the farmer and the merchant have the obligation of executing the contract. That is, the farmer is supposed to sell the product, whereas the uh, merchant is forced to buy the product irrespective to whatever may be the market scenario on the maturity date. On the other hand, just imagine that if the merchant pays some money to the farmer, so he pays some money to the farmer in order to get this contract. Okay, so then what happens is, in this case, the merchant will have only right to buy the rice, but no obligation. So that is the advantage that he gains by paying a small price for this contract to the farmer. If the buyer pays some money, that is the price for the contract, and thereby only holds the right to buy but not the obligation, then such contracts will come under the option. In particular, this is called a call option. Similarly, there is a put option where the buyer has right to sell. Here the buyer has right to buy, whereas the input option, the buyer has the right to sell the underlying asset. Swap is another type of derivative which we will not be discussing at all, but I will just introduce what is swap later in the course, but time being I will just leave it. We'll discuss in detail about these future and options later in the course. Let us next pass on to what is called asset pricing models. As I told you previously, an investment can be interpreted as an asset, right? So you are paying some money and buying a bond. Say, for instance, you are investing money in a bond or in the bank fixed deposit. You can imagine that you are paying money and getting that certificate which the bank gives or the bond, and that comes to you as an asset. So in that way, you can interpret your investment as an asset. Now the question is, where the money that you pay, that is the principal, can be viewed as the price that you are paying. So this can be interpreted as the price that you are paying for the asset, and the maturity amount that you get at the end of the investment period is the gain that you have, right? So depending on what kind of gain you have, your price will be decided. Okay, so for instance, let's take the fixed deposit example. You paid 100 rupees to the bank, and the bank gave you an interest at the rate of 10% per annum, say for instance. Then after 1 year, your 100 rupees became 110 rupees, right? The bank will give you a certificate which states that after 1 year, the bank will give you 110 rupees. For that, today you paid the price, which is nothing but the invested amount of 100 rupees. So the money you paid to get this asset, that is this asset, is 100 rupees. Okay, so this is just an interpretation. Okay, so let's try to model this very simple, rather the simplest asset pricing model. So somebody tells you that the asset value is 110 rupees and the interest rate given is 10%. What is the value of this asset today if it is going to come to you 1 year later? Then what you will do, obviously the maturity amount is nothing but your x plus the interest, right? That is 100 plus 10, which is 110. What is the interest? Interest is nothing but x plus interest is 10% of the uh, principal, right? So 10% of the principal is nothing but r into x, right? That is equal to x into 1 plus r. So the price of your asset, that is the asset that you are getting, the price that you pay is x. So from here, x is equal to the value of the asset in the future time divided by this factor 1 plus r. Okay, so this is the price that you are going to pay for the asset which pays you this amount after 1 year. Okay, so this is a very simple example of asset pricing. Okay, so this is the formula that you get. So similarly, see here it is very simple because you have no risk first and foremost, and your interest rate is fixed. Okay, the period is already known to you to be 1 year. Everything is well defined, no risk involved. So this model is very simple. You can, with just common sense, you can derive this. But in practice, the situations are very complicated. You have risk involved. The interest rates may not be very well defined, or they may be varying from time to time. And the period also may not be fixed. And so many such factors and complications come in such scenarios, different complications, how to price your assets. Okay, so that you can pay a fair price. You don't pay overprice to your assets. So that is why the asset pricings are very important. So in our course, as the name suggests, we will be trying to model the pricing of derivatives. Okay, so one can imagine that this contract is actually the contract which the for instance the merchant gets by paying some money in the case of a call option. You can imagine that contract which he pays money and gets and holds the right as an asset to him. So pricing of such assets becomes very important, and that's the main aim of this course also. Before ending the lecture, let us briefly see what is meant by portfolio. In finance mathematics, portfolio theory also plays an important role. Once we decide to invest in risky assets, it is always advisable not to invest all our money into one single asset. So you have all your money, say, you just put everything in one asset, it's going to be very risky. For instance, assume that a person invested all money in buying shares of one single stock, say. If the share price of the stock crashes due to some reason, then the person will lose a considerable part of his invested amount, right? So diversifying the investment into several stocks and also across different assets reduce the risk relatively. So for instance, let's consider dividing our surplus money into three parts, say 50% of the money, and then 30% and 20%. If the person is, say, below 50 years, then the person can think of putting his half of his money into equity, say 30% into bonds and deposits, and remaining 20 maybe in gold and silver, etc. Okay. On the other hand, if a person who is this is less than or equal to greater than or equal to 70 or 65 years, say, can be just reversed. For that person, this can be in bonds and deposits. This can be in maybe gold and silver, and this can be in equity. Okay, for 70 plus, this is for 50 minus, 70 plus, 50 minus, and so on. So this is just an illustration. So splitting or diversing your investment, okay, into several assets and putting money. Even when you are putting in equity, it's not that you put the entire 50% into equity. You further divide it into several parts and put it into different stocks. Okay. This is what is called diversifying your investment. Okay. The collection of, finally, the collection of all your investments. Okay. So this collection of all your investment is what is called a portfolio. Finally, the return of all your investment is nothing but the return coming from each of your assets, right? So sometimes even one asset may be depending on the other asset. Say, for instance, two stocks may be correlated to each other. Okay. Even suppose you are putting gold and you have invested some money in gold finance companies, then even this and this will also correlate. Like that, different assets across different sectors, they all will may correlate with each other and contribute in your net return. Okay. So studying the performance of the portfolio is a very challenging task, and the sophisticated mathematics is involved in this analysis. The ultimate aim of investment is to build a portfolio in such a way that the return is maximized while the risk is minimized. One has to constantly monitor the portfolio performance and make changes consistently whenever required. Okay, so this is actually a problem of analyzing and managing the portfolio. Highly sophisticated mathematics is involved in these theories, but we will not be touching upon this in details in this course.